Hey guys, Mr. V over here doing a book review today for Body for Rent by Hendriks and Olivia Smit. This is a nonfiction book about two girls who fall into prostitution, forced prostitution, in the red light district in Amsterdam. Before you read this book, I would say you want to be over the age of 18 because they're dealing with very adult situations. It's a very tough subject. I mean, forced prostitution. And they're doing it in the red light district in Amsterdam. So while prostitution is legal there, it is still a very tough subject because these two girls were forced into it. And that's what makes it even tougher when reading it. And the book is just nonfiction, and you're following the two girls, Anna and Olivia. And they are saying how they are slightly different in that they didn't fall into prostitution because of drugs. They said most of the prostitutes they met fell in because of drugs, and they did not. But they fell into it for different reasons because they both came from very tough families, and they just fell into the wrong crowd. And then a lot of other things start to happen, which they go over in the book. And you can see this book starts out immediately brutal because I mean, there's about 2 pages of like showing like a nice family, then immediately it just does a 180, and they just show how tough life they had. Where Anna, she came from a tough family as they divorced at a young age, but both parents are using her to try and make the other jealous, and that's what makes it very tough for her, and the parents aren't too nice to her about it. Whereas Olivia, she comes from a very violent family, where the parents are always fighting, and they're going to extreme fighting. Like they will throw plates at each other, they're always yelling, they're hitting each other. And both these girls, they just become friends around, I think it was 11, and they just started being rebellious from a very young age, which they started drinking, they started skipping school, they started stealing, getting arrested for those types of things at just a very young age. And that's when they meet the wrong people and they fall into that crowd and they meet the guy who will eventually become their pimp. So that's how they get into it. And they just go through the whole book about what happens. And this was a very tough read. It was well written, but it was a tough read just based off the subject. It was very compelling because they had a lot of interesting stories in it. But this is not for the faint of heart because it's pretty brutal when reading it, as they have many stories from the time they're just 11, 12, 13, and them being rebellious and skipping school to where when they're forced into the prostitution and they're forced in at a pretty young age as well, and when they're working when they're of legal age. And you just see what it's like in the beginning, how it is dealing with their pimp, the fights they have with their pimp. One even starts dating the pimp at one point, and just all the drama that goes along with that. And you just see what life is like, and when like someone is controlling, when you feel like you're being controlled by someone else. Because at the whole time, you know, they're feeling like they're controlled by their pimp. And you can just see what the life is like. And they just share their emotions. They let you know how it was. Some parts are very in depth, whereas some parts are pretty brief and just an overview, but you get a very good sense of what it was like being them and just how tough their life is. One thing that I was glad they went over was they say why they became a prostitute and why they did it without a fight and why they stayed in without going to the family, without going to police. I'm glad that they mentioned that. They didn't just say, okay, we fell into prostitution and this is what happened. No, they give you their emotion and they say why they fell into it without a fight. And the reason I say I'm glad they did that is because other books I've read, they just give you the overview and don't give you too much emotion. But this one gives you the emotion. But you also, the reason I'm also glad is that you see why they don't go to police, because you see this happen in many abusive relationships. You always see abusive relationships and you always wonder why are they staying in that relationship? We are never in that spot, like when you're observing other people, but you wonder, okay, why are they in it? So both these girls explain why they stayed in it. I won't say why because I think you should read that in the book, but it's also interesting as each girl gives a different answer to why they stayed in the relationship and why they continued without going to the police. So it's very interesting to doing that. And I'll also say this has a very interesting writing style. It's from a first person point of view, and they're sharing their emotions. They're writing it, they're now in their 30s, I think, when they released the book. So they're writing it from that perspective. But what's cool about the writing style is the chapters switch back and forth between Anna and Olivia. Where one chapter, Anna will say what she did, the next chapter, Olivia will say what she did, but there is no repeating. They aren't repeating the exact story. And so they're moving the story along about their lives. It'll be like one will explain why they got into one thing, and then the next will explain why they got into another. And they keep going back and forth. And I felt that was a very interesting writing style, but it was kind of cool because it gives you a good perspective of each girl while knowing the other girl still went through the same thing. So that was really cool. And I listened to the audiobook for this, and I think the audio really was great for this because the audiobook had two narrators. So each time you're hearing a different person. Like you're hearing a different voice for Anna, you hear a different voice for Olivia. So that I think helped even more to really feel like you're listening to two different people and you're hearing their stories, yet, they're still close friends, so you're hearing the overall story. And it was really good. And overall, I just enjoyed the book because I just thought this was well done. It gave you a very interesting story. It was very well written, and it just gives you a better perspective on so many situations and, situations we never have to deal with. So it gives you a good perspective on that. And again, I just think the book was very well done to where if you're interested in something like that, you may want to consider it. But if you guys have any comments or questions, please post it in the comment section below. If you guys enjoyed the book review today, hit the subscribe button as I always upload multiple different types of book reviews. But thank you for watching my book review today. This is Mr. V. Go enjoy reading.